if I have one piece of advice to people starting this, is like, get help. Don't use your common sense.
Love it.
This guy said, my coach goes, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a leadership coach. And he goes, well, I want to correct you. You are in the customer acquisition business.
All right, guys. So welcome everybody to another episode of Founder Closers. The reason why we have this podcast is to help the opportunity of these startup companies that are out there, these founders who are trying to navigate their way in the early parts of business on how to be successful. What I like to have on this podcast is I like to have other people who either are helping startups, helping founders, coaching individuals in the corporate landscape, or founders themselves. So today we have a great guest. We have Bill here. Bill, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me on. It's good to speak to you today. Looking forward to our conversation. So I spent over 30 years in corporate, rose through the ranks in technology leadership. I ended up being a CIO, which was a goal. And then in 2021, 4 years ago, I left corporate to start my own firm, which was kind of a lifelong dream, to start an executive coaching, leadership development, advisory firm. And so I've been doing that now for 4 years and have really enjoyed the journey, starting from nothing, bootstrap, all the way up to working, serving clients at Fortune 500 companies, as well as just individual leaders wanting to up their game.
Look, you and I have kind of gone down a different path. You have a lot more success in the corporate landscape before you decided to go out on your own, but we do a lot of the same things in today's world. Now, the thing that always interests me is, how soon did you know corporate lifestyle wasn't for you any longer? And what was the deciding factor for you to move on to the current venture you do today? What was that deciding factor for you?
Yeah, great question. There's a little bit bigger perspective on that, or a little more of a wider scope on that. About 23 years ago in corporate, I wanted to get promoted. So there's certain things I wanted in corporate. And one of those, I wanted to be a CIO. So I hired a coach. At that time, there's some things we see where you watch somebody do something, whether it's an athlete or a musician, you're like, I want to do that when I grow up. And when I hired my coach and started learning and really seeing the results, I'm like, you know what? I want to do this when I grow up, and grow up meaning like when I retire. And so for years, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I was actually preparing like way in advance for it. So it wasn't like there was this aha light switch moment. It really was over the course of 20 years, knowing I was going to do it. I had a family, my wife at the time didn't work, and I was raising a family, and I didn't have the guts to just go do it back then. And I had a goal of being CIO. And so when I got that, it was during 2021. I'm like, you know what? It was, COVID, we're kind of deep in COVID. I thought, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do it now. And so I'd already laid the groundwork. And I think COVID and sitting in my apartment, we had like floor to ceiling glass windows. And I remember taking my whiteboard markers out and had kind of a beautiful mind moment of just like scribbling this business plan on the glass. And really it was that decision, like, I'm going to burn the ships. There's no going back. There's no plan B. I'm just going to do this. And I was like, I've got to believe in myself to do it. So that's the story of how that came about.
So you've mentioned that you had a goal to become a CIO when you were in the corporate world. First off, if you can, what does a CIO stand for? Obviously you hear CEOs, OOs, ROs, like there's a lot of COs out there. What is a CIO, and why was becoming a CIO so important to you?
Yeah. So CIO in my context is Chief Information Officer. And there's so many derivatives. Like my last title was Chief Information Digital Officer. So there's all these variants that happen. The other CIO that you'll see if you Google it is Chief Investment Officer. So in the financial realm, there's that. And so either way, so it's all about leadership in IT, executive leadership in IT. And I think as I was rising through the ranks and getting more and more responsibility in technology and in IT, the thing that was compelling, it wasn't the title per se. I did think the money was important. So at the time, I thought, you know what? I know what kind of life I want in the future. Money's needed for that life. Like people say money doesn't matter. Well, that may be true, but whatever does matter to you, you need money. And so I was thinking, okay, I got to make money. I could go start a business. If you look at the highest paid people at that time, it was business owners and executives and salespeople. I mean, that salespeople make like as much as they want in most companies. And so I was like, you know what? I want to make good money. I want to influence the culture. I want to be able to leverage my way of doing things and also my leadership style, because I really believed in growing people, empowering people, and the wider scope is just the more impact you can have on the company and on people's lives. So that was a lot of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, I had this self-reflection probably about 7 years ago. I was actually consulting with my brother-in-law, who was at this point 21 years old, and he was living in our house with us. We were taking him in. His father passed at a young age, and so I kind of bear the responsibility of trying to take him from being a young man to an actual man. And one of the things we were talking about, which was establishing himself in his career. He had gone to college for about a semester, decided college wasn't for him, like so many of these young kids today, but he was chasing his career. And I explained to him that I think that you, as a young person in your career, you should look at your career with 3 different pillars. And I think that if you can find a role that can fill all 3 pillars, great, but there are some pillars that carry more value than others. And those 3 pillars, I would equate them to be is the money, number 2, the skills, and number 3, the network. And I think when you're younger in your career, so often the youth focuses on that money side, where I would argue that's the least important thing in your youth, and especially when you're living with your brother-in-law who doesn't need you to pay a ton of money, just wants you to have some responsibility. But that skill development and network development is what I think so often young people miss. And as I hear what you're saying, like you looked at that in the same aspect, like you wanted to first off get to that role so that you can make the impact that you needed to make. Yes, there would be a pay raise, which would help you fund the other things you wanted to do, but having the responsibility in that was going to let you make the biggest impact you had. Now, how long, once you made it to CIO, did you stay in that role before you decided to make that next transition?
A total of 7 years. When I was at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I was vice president, and Enterprise Rent-A-Car was at that time, I think, $20 billion. And it was a big enough company that in many organizations that size, I would have been like a divisional CIO or, because I had a lot of the CIO responsibilities, not all of them. So I kind of felt like I was a CIO before I had the title.
Right.
But I've been at Enterprise 20 years, and I decided I'd really like to go start a different company, mid-sized company, and help them grow. Because when I started at Enterprise, I think they were like $2 billion. And so over the course.
What year was this about when you started at Enterprise? Just for reference.
1996.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And, at that point, I really didn't know much about them. And they were a St. Louis company. I lived in St. Louis, and it was like, oh my gosh, family-owned company, amazing culture, opportunity to grow. And really, there was so much opportunity to leverage technology to grow and scale the business according to their culture. So that was just amazing. And so, but after 20 years, as much as I loved it, I wanted to go kind of start and help a company build from kind of a medium size. Because at a medium sized company, the nice thing was they were big enough that they had the investment and like some of the foundation, but then there was so much low hanging fruit to just say, okay, now we got to, bring more technology, standardize some processes, do some automation. And so I did that for about 7 years before I did it. And my plan was to do it, much longer. It's just that I think during COVID, it was like, well, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go do this coaching now.
It makes sense. And for a lot of the audience, and I want you to correct me here if I'm wrong, I found this out about Enterprise Rental Car probably when I was in my 30s. And I didn't know this, and at least this is my understanding of it today. And that is that Enterprise, everybody starts off at like the entry-level aspect. And I love that in the fact that my first sales job, I did this thing where I sold DirecTV inside of Sam's Clubs, Best Buy. It's a very similar model, which was, some people would even look at that as kind of like one of those multi-level marketing type of businesses. In reality, I think Enterprise has the similar structure. So did this Smart Circle that I worked at, which is everybody starts here and you evolve up. There was no ceiling to your growth. I mean, those branch managers at one point started off low and everybody grew up. And I love that no matter what your background was, no matter what you did before Enterprise, you were going to start at the very bottom and you were going to earn your opportunity to grow. And so I hear when you say like your leadership style is the growth side, that foundation probably started off just based off of being an Enterprise so long and seeing the value of people earning their doing it somewhere else and then getting it from a resume. And that foundationally is the way I build all my sales organizations too. And so since 2017, I've been building sales organizations more in the automotive software business side. And my whole process is I don't hire resumes. I hire people, and everybody starts off at an entry-level SDR role, no matter how much they made, no matter what they've done, no matter what they have accomplished. If you are as good as you think you are, then you'll have no problem starting here, outperforming everybody else, and your opportunity to grow will be up to you. Hire people off a resume. So it's similar that we had two different backgrounds, two different completely company structures, but we came to a similar leadership style foundation. Now, one of the things you said earlier is, and I asked you, when did you make the decision to move? And what I heard you say, Bill, is you made a very proactive decision where you planned, strategized this exit to be able to go into your next venture. And I would guess that in these past 5 years, there's been a lot of people that have done this same move that you and I have done, but more in a reactive state. Have you seen a lot of that too? I mean, I think we kind of talked a little bit about that before.
Yeah, yes, I have. When I made my decision, and it was like the timing, because I knew I was going to do it. When I made my decision, I didn't see as many people doing what I'm doing. I think there were people in the leadership development and coaching space that had their firms, or they were doing it for larger companies, and they'd been around for a while. And after I started, gradually, I guess over the course of 2 years, I was just seeing more and more. And I don't think it was just sort of my gradual awareness, because I think I was aware from the very, because, at the beginning I was thinking about competition, like who are my competition? And I quit thinking about that now. I don't think about, thinking about competition limits us and constrains us.
Yeah. Feast mindset, or famine mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I think a big part of it is because of, during COVID, there was layoffs. And then with AI, there's layoffs. With the economy, there's been all these reasons for layoffs. And I think when the layoffs came, especially for people that got packages when they, the executives, they got packages when they left, it gave them fuel and runway to go try their thing. And so there has been more and more people doing it. What'll be interesting is to see how many can sustain the mindset, the stress, everything that goes with entrepreneurship. Like, it's interesting. There's a lot of executives. They ran big parts of companies, or they ran the company. And this, Matt, when you're an entrepreneur, it's completely different. Like, you think I've managed big budgets, I've managed these big teams. Like, when you start out a solopreneur, it's a whole different game in terms of what you got to do, the mindset. And, I found that mindset's such a big part of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, when you talk about the looking at other people who did what you do as competition, I think that's probably a common thing that all of us struggle with at first. And I struggle with the same thing. And man, over these past 2 years, and really, especially since I've been doing this podcast, man, I have kind of really leaned back into, when we talk about those 3 pillars I was talking about earlier, I think the most missed part of those pillars is the network side. And man, the thing that has served me become a better coach, to become a better leader for my clients, is by having the relationships with people like you, Bill, who have a different level of experience, a different level of expertise that I can network with and I can know. And you're no competition to me, not in saying that I know better than me, but we can be stronger together than we ever would be trying to work against each other. So now I have many different times where I've got a client where I've got a certain area of expertise, and I'll tag in one of my other buddies who maybe can close a gap better than I can to better serve that client. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're in the business we're in, which is helping our customers get the best outcome, that's ultimately what matters, in being able to be humble enough and self-aware enough to know maybe I'm not the best person to serve this client for this specific need, but having a network of people around me that can fill all of these gaps help. And so for me, that famine mindset, I think, is something that really hamstrings a lot of people. Now, to your point, as a lot of these guys who used to be in the corporate landscape, there's so many advantages to being in the corporate landscape with the infrastructure and organizational process that's placed around you. And I've really analyzed that there's 2 different types of founders out there. And I'd love to get your perspective on this, Bill. I think in today's landscape, I look at founders as being either technical founders or they're being revenue-focused founders. And for me, my area of expertise is I tend to want to work with non-revenue-focused founders, because I feel like that's the value I can add to their table that maybe isn't in their wheelhouse. So if they're a technical founder who's got a product idea, they're an executioner, they're a developer, they're a guy that's done operational things before, they probably weren't in the position often to be the face of the selling operation. And now when they have to go sell their business, they're the best equipped to do it because they know their business, but they don't know how to actually do sales technically. So I try to find those people who have a great product, have a proof of concept, and they're the face of sales, but they need help either learning how to be better at sales or, more importantly, probably moving out of the sales side and being able to understand how to bring in an effective sales process. What do you do around that, Bill?
Oh, that is so good. I remember I just decided to start my business and I got my LLC and I did all the things that are like fun. I got to get my website and the LLC. Yeah. And it's like the least important thing actually. And I hired a coach and because I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to pretend like I've done this before. No, so I'm going to get help. And to me, that's like, if I have one piece of advice to people starting this, is like, get help. Don't use your common sense.
Love it.
This guy said, my coach goes, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a leadership coach. And he goes, well, I want to correct you. You are in the customer acquisition business. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's so right. It's like, if I can't acquire clients, doesn't matter what I do. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, you know what? I am first and foremost a salesperson. Now I might hire salespeople, but if I can't sell, the business isn't a business.
Correct.
And I agree. Like I do all my selling now, but at some point I need to give it up and hire salespeople. And I might want to talk to you about that.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's so I think that's why so many people, they bail and get out, is because they say, oh, I don't like the selling. I don't like, acquiring business.
And if you don't like it, you won't be good at it. Like that's Bill, like that's the reality of it, is like, if you don't look forward to having an opportunity to tell somebody about how your solution is the best thing for them, then ultimately, if you don't believe in it, you won't do it. And now I've heard you mention this multiple times. You said now twice, you hired a coach. That's something that I probably struggle with more than I should have early as a person who was a coach, being willing to go hire a coach for me to close my gaps. I didn't know a lot about marketing when I first started. I knew how to sell, but I didn't know about marketing. So I had to go hire a coach to teach me about marketing and advertising and those things to help me get my name out there. When I first got moved into an executive role, the company that promoted me into the head of sales hired me an executive coach. That's a thing that you really have to humble yourself to be willing to do a coach. And I think most people aren't willing to look at themselves and say, I have a weakness, somebody else can help me. How did you come to that realization? Was it natural to you? Was there a lot of self-negotiation? I mean, how did you come to that conclusion?
To hire a coach?
Yes, sir.
Boy, that's a great question. I think I've always been coachable. I've always been curious, and I think I've had a sense of humility in terms of. I mean, I think I've had confidence, but I've had a sense of humility. Like I don't know it all, and like when I was younger, I had coaches. And I appreciated what they brought to the table. I played guitar. I had like music instructors. I appreciate so I've always believed. And when I was younger, even though I was in technology, I used to go, you'll like this. I used to go to the library and I would check out cassette tapes. So you might want to explain to some of your audience what a cassette tape. But I would check out these cassette tapes and they were like motivational tapes, Brian Tracy, the Nightingale Conant, like they were all those kinds. And I just was drawn to it. And so I was actually being coached by these experts on tape. So I had early on, but I think what I realized was a good coach can get me where I want to be faster.
Yes.
And not make the mistakes and take a long time. And there's got to be a return on investment if I hire a good coach.
Yeah. And that's the big part and that's the fear I always had is like, I'm not willing to invest the money if I'm confident I can get the return on the investment. So I guess you got to make sure you do your due diligence and make sure you get that return on the investment. I know that my business partner, Matt Walton, has said to me now for many years, he is a firm believer in this book called Who Not What. And this is a book that he has read, and this changed his whole landscape. So working directly with Matt has been able to have a huge influence on me when it comes to this process. And you mentioned earlier it doesn't matter how good you are at sales, and you might be the best seller out there. Being able to go get new business is going to be the key for any new entrepreneur in that aspect. And so often people focus so heavily on, I'm a great seller, I can present, but they don't know how to actually get people to their front door. Do you help with people on that side of the aspect, Bill, or do you help them more with the strategy of making their product, their business more effective? And I'll ask one last thing, because the common mistake when I meet with founders, I ask them that same question your coach asked you. What do you do? 9 out of 10 people struggle with answering that question in less than 15 words. And so that is one of the biggest things I work with founders on is let's refine who you are, what you do, and ultimately what your offer is. And that's kind of step one I work with them on. What is your kind of step one you work with the people you might, help in executive coaching?
Yeah. So my ideal client profile is a senior technology leader. It's often a title of director. And I focus on technology from a marketing perspective because that gives me credibility. I did that. I've been there. I've done it. I've made the journey and I know how to help you make the same journey. Now, at the same time, I have accountants, lawyers, I have all sorts of people that come to me, even though I haven't marketed. But what my offer to them is to first understand what they want.
Okay.
Like, what do you want in your career? Where do you want to go? What do you want to look like? I'll even ask them what they want the future to look like. Like one of the things that I'll ask them to do is write your autobiography in 5 years, 10 years, depending on where they're at. Write a day in the life 20 years from now, 10 years from now. And I give them like 10 domains to write about. So a day, like when, in 20 years, I wake up and I work out right away. So it's like a day in the life in the future across these different domains of life. And so this is like what the future is going to look like. And then it's like, okay, well then let's talk about what it's going to take to get there. And ultimately it backs up to a career strategy. And it's like, okay, so you want to be a CTO, a CISO, a CIO, whatever it might be. And then we work on the gaps, what they need to get there. Because, I love the saying, I think it was a Marshall Goldsmith book, what got you here won't get you there, something like that.
Right.
And it's so true because what happens in the technology world is most people in technology, they kind of grow up school and experience. They learn the business to some degree. They learn technology, but they haven't learned what we call the power skills. They haven't learned how to cultivate executive relationships. They haven't learned how to understand their own emotions and moods and understand them in others and actually shift them as needed. They struggle with conflict resolution, with emotional intelligence, and on and on and on. It's all these what people call the softer skills.
Yeah.
And so ultimately to get where they want, if they want to give above director, they've got to develop those skills. And I do that through both teaching and situational coaching.
Love that. I love that. So first off, after this, can you send me those examples that you would ask somebody to go through those exercises? I would like to do it like to see it and do it myself, just to give myself this exercise. I think it would be fun for me to kind of challenge myself on. And I love that you have kind of a prescribed thing you do. Now, what I would ask you though, Bill, is what percentage of the people you meet with in that first interaction when you ask that question already know the answers to these things in regards to what they want to be, what they want to become, what their goals are, what their why is? Or do you find that a lot of people are just going through the motions and don't even really have that defined yet?
The latter. I think what happens is there's the quick answer like, oh, I want to be a CTO or I want to be a CISO. I want to be, like they'll say, I want to be the title. But then if you stop there and ask them why? They don't. Yeah. And so that's where I start with the future. You mentioned your 3 pillars, which I love that. One of the little models, probably a couple of years ago, I saw it for the first time it's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese model. And there's kind of 4 quadrants to that. And I've actually incorporated that as well in terms of helping people really understand what they want. And for some, it leads to a complete career change, complete career transition. Because it's like, what do you want? What are you passionate about? What do you like to do? And then what does the world need? Can you make money at it? Kind of get into the 3 pillars, to the parts. There's some overlap between your pillars and this Ikigai model. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, my whole business model at Spinwheel, and we, obviously foster this into the companies that we consult with as well, which is our whole model and our mission statement is we build future leaders. So for us, we want to bring in people that have little to no experience or whatever experience you had, like leave that shit at the front door. I don't care. Like at the end of the day, you are all starting off fresh. We're going to build something together from here and here on out. And I genuinely mean when people come in here, I want them to be here for the rest of their career. And I want them to elevate into partnership with me inside of my organization, working with me and working for our clients in that way. And I really try to instill that within the clients I work with, and that letting them know that you don't have to hire that person with this big resume, because in a lot of times you're going to be untraining a bunch of bad habits and not instilling that in there. And so in order for me to have a business model that's centered around mentorship, growth, and development of my people, the number one thing I need to find out is what is their why. And I think so often when you ask that question, you get the bullshit answers like money, you get the bullshit answers like I need to do it for my family. And those are all surface level, like automatic responses. Like if I'm at the store and they're like, hey, can I help you find some? No, I'm good. I'm just looking. That's the type of responses you get. So really that diving deep and understanding what's behind that purpose, what exactly is driving that outcome. For me, when I realized in my professional career that I was driven by three things, it really not just helped me understand how to grow, but it also helped me help people around me grow, because I could then communicate effectively what motivates me. And so my things that motivate me is I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. Incredibly competitive. And when you can place me in a competitive landscape against other people doing what I'm doing, I am going to do the absolute necessary thing to bury my competition, not just beat them, but I want to double the score on the scoreboard type of thing. And so sales was always a great tool as a former athlete, because I had dashboards and metrics and scoreboards, and I wanted to beat them in every measurable analytic I could beat my competition. And so it always translated well. I always has been driven for growth. So early in my career, it was my own career development. And then as I've grown, it's been helping the companies I work with or the employees that I work with grow. And then I've also, and some people wouldn't be willing to admit this, I like to win and I like to lift the trophy up at the end of the celebration too. And I know that. So I'm going for the trophy. I'm going for the President's Award. I'm going for the number one spot so I can wear that gold medal proudly in my presence. But you have to have that understanding of that. And Bill, what I've seen so often in my coaching career, whether that's just employees or companies, is so often people don't understand their real why, and helping them navigate understanding that is really where you unlock the biggest opportunity. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it starts there. Because without that, people could be just starting to travel down the wrong road. Wrong as in it's not going to be as fulfilling.
Correct.
Because I think, we all have this deep desire that we're born with. It's like in our DNA. And for you, like winning, competing, that's part of your DNA. And raising the trophy is part of your DNA. And like do it proudly. Like that's you flourishing, right? And so I think it has to start there. And I do start there with people in terms of like, why do you want to do what you're doing? And I've been doing quite a bit of career transitioning. And I start with branding, and, like, let's don't jump to your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Like, who are you? What's your brand? What do you want? What's your purpose? And for some people, it's super painful. Like they haven't ever thought about it.
Correct.
Some people take 8 hours. It should only take like 2 hours if you've thought about it. And some people take like 8 hours, and I don't judge that. It's just like, man, do the work, because this is so important. And then all of that branding and purpose and why, then you get all this narrative that feeds the resume. It feeds the LinkedIn profile. It feeds your networking conversations. And people are so much more grounded and actually have better success faster because they're so grounded in that.
Yeah, one of the other things that I'm really working on this now, and this has come through conversations like this, is I'm working on, when I first started my coaching business, I was like, I'm going to coach every business in every industry and I'm going to just be the master of all, or the doer of all, but the master of none. And look, I was able to be able to survive in that way. But really where I know I need to thrive is when I was able to really hone in, here's what I am a master at. Here's what I do better than anybody else does. Now, if somebody outside of this place wants me to help them, I can. I'll give you a perfect example. So my background has been in automotive, and I mostly have helped the vendor side of automotive build their businesses to sell to the 18,000 plus car dealerships in the country. Now, about a year and a half ago, an old employee of mine is going to work for this car dealership out in California, and they have 28 stores. And he said, hey, the owner is looking for a person to come build an outsourced BDC for them. And I said, Chris, brother, thank you for thinking of me. I've never worked in a dealership. I've never built a BDC. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. I know you're an amazing team builder. You're great at processes. Just talk to him, see if it makes sense. Well, the owner convinces me to come in and build this massive outsourced BDC for them, and we made it work. But it wasn't my expertise. It wasn't my specialty. And I made a ton of money doing it, but I was unfulfilled because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And so now, as I decided after about a year and a half of helping them with that, we got it all stood up, handed it over to them and said, hey, you guys are good from here. We'll go on. Now we're really going back to helping the vendor side of this, which is really where my specialization is. And just since we made that shift back there, we've seen the progress go forward. Now, Bill, one of the things that you and I spoke about before is there's a lot of flattening going on in a lot of these organizations out there. There's so many people right now being laid off, and there's a lot of different reasons why, and we can go into the different reasons it could be. But how do you feel the job industry, the employment market is right now? And what do you think we need to do to kind of adjust towards what we see in front of us?
Yeah, I've seen it over the last year, and it's been happening longer, and it's been very public. Companies like Microsoft and Meta and others have just publicly said we're letting all these people go, and they've given reasons for it. And I think it's been happening for a lot of reasons. I think the economy, the perception of the economy, the AI, the belief in what the promises of AI. So there's all these different reasons, and I think the flattening is happening, and I think it's gonna. My opinion is it's going to continue to happen. I don't know if it'll ever go back to being hierarchical again. I think there'll always be hierarchical companies, but I think we're seeing that, and what we're seeing is there's a lot of what we call middle managers and senior leaders that are being let go and having a very difficult time finding a job.
Yeah.
I talk to them weekly, and in some cases, the people, they've relied on their jobs and they've been heads down for years, and many haven't built networks. They've done no networking. They haven't done like nothing on their LinkedIn profile, and now they're like starting from scratch rather than having all that ready to go in advance. And my concern for these people, and some people that I've talked to have been looking for a job for over 14, 16 months. And my concern is that if they continue on that, they're going to continue to have these opportunity costs that are going to be really, really high. And so I think people are going to need to rethink what they're doing. They're going to need to think about, do I need to have that kind of role? Can I be a high-performing, high-paid individual contributor, and just rethinking it. And I also believe, I don't want to go too far into this unless you want to, is I believe that traditional companies that have been hierarchical, they're flattening, they're not putting in place the change management, because where, let's say, an individual contributor had a manager that they met with them, once a week, and all of a sudden it's flat and they don't have the direction, they don't have the access, they haven't built the skills around influence and coordinating people, they're not part of their organization. They don't have the top cover, and they haven't built the skills to navigate and be effective. And we're seeing that now. I talk to some companies and have a couple clients that are in high tech companies. They've been flat for a long time, and they've already built all this. Like you can see how they're effective, and these are the skills that the companies that are flattening, if they tend to leave it that way, they've got to get these skills in place.
Yeah, I mean, as I hear you say it, I hear what you're saying is the guy who's been married for 20 years, he got fat, he got out of shape, he stopped being attractive. All he does is wear basketball shorts every day and a tank top, and then all of a sudden his wife leaves him. And now he has no idea how to go out there and market himself. And so I would say, and Bill, you tell me whether I'm not experiencing the same thing. I'm not in the same conversations you are there. Maybe it's that I'm just still young enough in my career that I don't have, and I never have had an interest in those fully established companies. Like, it's never been interesting to me, because to me, there's, in the space I've been in, if one of those companies that had already been established said, hey, we'll pay you 20% more and you can just work here and just have this title and just do this job forever, that would be absolutely boring. I love the growth, the build, the development side. And so for me, I'm always chasing that young, hungry company. I'm chasing that exciting new opportunity. So it sounds to me like what a lot of these people that you're talking about have to do is they need to be able to go out and reinvent themselves. They need to be able to go and actually leave their ego at the front door and realize they got to go back and earn that seat that they earned 20 years ago, that they've been sitting in just being lazy. Is that kind of the advice you'll give them? Maybe not as harsh as I just said it, but the general advice is you're probably just going to have to go and start back from scratch and rebuild yourself and reinvent who you are.
Yeah.
Or is it like just stay true to who you are and eventually you'll find something?
Yeah. I tend to lean towards, move now on reinventing yourself. If you get a phone call and somebody wants you to come to a similar company that you're at and it's the same thing, and good for you, you got that. But I mean, and I'm sure people I talk to, people out there, they're posting, like they're applying to jobs. Some of the jobs really don't even exist, and they're applying to jobs. They're not getting a response. The job boards are overwhelmed. The recruiters are overwhelmed. That there's just that's in the industry that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I think, and quite frankly, I think personally, I think you and I are wired more similar than different. I think we should always be reinventing ourselves, always rethinking. And, that's why, like during COVID, it was interesting to watch the businesses that they observed, they noticed, they designed, they pivoted, and they're successful.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the restaurants that they jumped on takeout, they jumped on all these other models, and they thrived versus like sitting and waiting. Well, this thing will be over in a few days. And I think, there's some people I've talked to, and they're in month 6 of unemployment, and they're not thinking about how much income they're losing every month as compared to doing something different or even getting a coach. Like somebody that's unemployed, it doesn't have to be me. I mean, it's like, just get help. If you're not equipped and prepared to find another job, get help. If it costs you $5,000, well, how much money are you losing every month because you're not employed? Like the ROI is going to be there. Get good help, but get help. And I think, and I get creative, like you said, go back, like look at the 3 pillars, look whatever you want. But there's no reason to not be making money in our economy. And so rethink what you're doing, reinvent yourself. And I love it when somebody says, yeah, I got laid off. I couldn't find anything and I became a real estate agent. It's like, good for you. Like, if that's what you want to do, like, like
we have 24 hours in every day. We don't have to spend every hour of those looking for a job. I mean, you can do things that are going to make you smarter, read a book, learn about a new skill. I mean, like the amount of knowledge that's just given to you in today's landscape on podcasts, on YouTube, on AI, I mean, social media. I could spend 5 hours on social media, and just spending 5 hours on social media, I could start 10 businesses just off the information that's given to you free based off of how to use AI in today's landscape. So, what I like in general, what I'm hearing a lot of people are probably struggling with, they're struggling with their identity being so attached to their ego, being so attached to that title of that company. At the end of the day, you are only as good as what your options are at that time. And yeah, to that point, I could imagine if I've only lost my job, I've only been unemployed, I would say less than 2 months of my life since I was 15 years old. And I'm not against that. If I got laid off today, I would go serve. I would go serve at a restaurant.
yeah.
If I didn't have income coming in, I'd go find something else. Now, luckily, I have marketable skills that I can provide to any company because I'm a salesperson. And I can say, hey, teach me about your product. I'll go sell it for free. You don't pay me anything when I sell it. You give me money. How about that? That's always a marketable skill that I can provide to any company that will never say no to me when I say that. I'll go find you leads. I'll bring them to you and then I'll close them for you. If I do, will you give me half of the revenue from that deal? Great. Cool. No risk for you. I'll bring you extra deals. Anybody will be willing to do it. Find the thing that makes you undeniable and makes it in the marketplace. Now, what you had also said to me earlier is you think that this is going to create a lot more solopreneurs. Now, one thing I've seen, Bill, is I've seen a lot of people doing this thing right now. And everybody I talk to is really successful at it. But I bet that's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I bet a lot of people aren't as successful as they say they are at it. But what have you seen from your seat, sitting where you are, seeing and experiencing since COVID, the growth of the solopreneur? What are the things people are doing right? What are they doing wrong? And if somebody decides to go that route, what should they do outside of hiring a coach?
Yeah, I have seen, well, since I've been done what I'm doing, I've seen a lot of people pop up, and not that I'm tracking them every day, but what I notice is, after a while they're gone. They're not doing what they were doing. And for some people, they're finding their way back to corporate, or they've got a friend or a family member that's got a business and they're teaming up with them. But it's a tough road. And I think the ones that are doing well are the ones that they figure out what needs to be done. Okay, so this is what I want to do. Here are the things I have to do to be successful, the actions I have to take, and they're consistent. And when they get stuck, they figure out how to get unstuck and they keep going. I think of a lot of like with sports. If you think about your experience with sports, is like, just because you get stuck or it gets tough, or you gotta break through it. You gotta keep going. And there's a common saying, there's no such thing as failure, only quitting. And I think a lot of people quit. There's that saying, I think it's in the book Think and Grow Rich, the story about the guy that was 3 feet from gold. He sold his mine because he thought it was dry, and he sold it to some guy, and then the guy went out, hired an engineer to study all the land, and said, no, I think there's gold like right over here. And there was. And this guy just lost it all.
Before he hit the gold mine, right?
Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I think they don't realize they're 3 feet from gold, and they quit. And so that's why we talked earlier about, if I think the number one skill, for me, my perspective, the number one skill in solopreneurship is mindset. And it's mental strength, and it's to stop the voices that are saying quit or doubting, and don't listen to family members that are doubting. It's just believe in yourself, be consistent, go, but make sure you know what the skills are that need to be there, and that's how you help people. It's like you got to have the skills, you got to know how to do it. And I think last thing on that is what I notice is, and I've had some of this struggle myself, is like, if you hire a coach and you don't do what the coach says, don't expect
hire one in the first place. Yeah.
Don't expect the results if you're not doing what the coach
It's
says.
like hiring a personal trainer and then not doing the workouts, and like you get mad at the scale for not losing weight.
Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting that that's the perspective you gain from, because I don't disagree with anything you said. I would say one of the biggest challenges I see with people who ultimately want to do the solopreneurship is they get caught up so much in overthinking the details, and they never actually do the action of just moving, just go. And so when you said in there, like one of the biggest things you see that works is the consist. That to me is what it is. I would say in the first 6 months of being a solopreneur, just show up every day and complete all of the tasks you have on your plate. And eventually everything will work through that, as long as you've got a good offer, you have the ability to answer in 15 words or less, what do you do, and have an actual value prop and do it. The other part is, so often people spend so much time thinking of the perfect plan, so they never go live with the perfect plan. They never do it. And then because they spend so much time coming up with the perfect plan, they're so ill-equipped to pivot off that plan because they spent so much time investing into it. So for me, I think one of the biggest advantages I have is I'm not the smartest guy in any room. Is I'm dumb enough just to start moving my feet and seeing when the pivot needs to happen and adjust and adjust and adjust. So in the 3 years that I've done this, I've pivoted 10 times, Bill. Like, it's not like I've gone with the exact original plan I had. We pivoted, we moved, we've adjusted, we've done this. And I've got a good, loyal team of people who've been with me for the past 3 years that will be with me for good. And for that reason, I'm set because I've got a solid team and my strength is developing people. But how we execute that is not the way we went into the business. So the pivoting side is probably one of the biggest parts I see people not able to do well. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I cut you off. I totally agree with that. There's so much to it that, like what you said, is so true in terms of the overthinking is. Like, I love the law of cause and effect. If you don't take an action, there's not going to be a result. And so if you're sitting around thinking about it, you're not taking any action. One of my coaches early on said, action breeds clarity. Like, just get started.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect because you get so much information by just getting started. I've pivoted I've pivoted probably 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And doing what I'm doing, because it's that feedback that you get. I think I think some people pivot too soon.
Sure.
Out of impatience.
Sure.
Like that 3 feet from the gold.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, so I think it just requires really good judgment on when to pivot.
I agree. And I believe in my gut. I believe I'm very instinctual. I believe that you give me option A, B, and C, you tell it to me. I don't have to think about it. I know the answer right then and there. And I hear the people that are like, well, let me think on it. and I'll get back to you. And I'm like, you knew within the 5 seconds of me telling you option A, B, and C which one you were going to do. You just chicken shit to pull the strings on it. Now, that's just because that's how I think. That's just how I feel. Maybe people have to really analyze the different thing and really research and check on these things. Last thing, Bill, last point of topic, and I like to talk about this with everybody, and everybody's at different stages of their career, different levels of experience. What do you think is going to be the biggest benefit of AI and the biggest deficit of AI that we're going to experience in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think fundamentally about it, not really specifically, but I think the biggest benefit of AI is just the capacity and power that it gives individuals and companies. It's really, I don't want to oversimplify it, but if you think about it, we've had new technology every year for forever. And even like when the internet, even though the internet had been around for years, like the internet came out with the World Wide Web, it's like, there was all this hype around it. And I think AI is the same, but it's just more complex, more powerful because of the math and the compute that sits behind it now. So I think of it in terms of just the capacity and capability it gives us. I think the downside, the dark side is there's a lot of hype around it right now, is where people are completely trusting it, like just explicitly trusting.
Yeah.
Is like, just do this for me.
Yeah.
Until a specific task is proven to just do it, it usually requires oversight. And so, I think there's a lot of people now that are just using it to write. Like if I read a post, I can tell.
Social media is like 90% AI.
Yeah. And you just look at it and it's like, in fact, it's hard to read some of it. It's just like, oh my gosh. And so I think people are going to lose the skill of critical thinking if they don't stay focused on staying sharp, learning, making sure you are skilled in critical thinking and don't lose your human mind in the process.
Yeah. I think it gives me a massive advantage on my competition, to be honest with you, Bill. I mean, like, I use it. I'm using it more and more and more. I mean, like I put together a proposal for a client in less than 5 minutes the other day, something that would have taken me hours to put together. And it's not that I let it put everything together, help me place a framework. And the real trick to using AI in my business is how you prompt it. And you have to prompt it very correctly. But I mean, Bill, and I think I might have shared this with you in our first conversation we had. I actually went through 3 hours of telling ChatGPT everything about my business, because I currently run 4 different types of businesses. And I went in and told it all about my people, my business, my clients, and I downloaded it all. And then I created a board of directors using ChatGPT and created individual personas to reflect and mirror the benefits and my weaknesses of mine within my board of directors. So I created a chief financial officer, a chief technology officer. I created all these different board of directors. And then I actually have meetings with my board of directors using ChatGPT, using those different personas, personalities, and experience. But it took a lot of training, prompting, and educating in regards to how to use it. But man, the amount of things that I can come up with and design and create with my already pretty creative mind, it's amazing. Now, look, I do firmly believe I've got a little bit more of a catastrophe mindset around AI than most. I believe it'll take 90% of the jobs out there within the next 10 years. Like, I think that even roles like what I currently train and coach and manage right now today, just speaking of sales, and I have this conversation and debate with people all the time. And look, I hope I'm wrong here, Bill. But right now today, AI can replace any inbound cold calling, any inbound lead process, any texting and email automation process for any business. If you've got people doing those actions and you are a person in a business doing those actions, you better upgrade your skill set really quickly. In the next 12 months, they will be able to replace all outbound cold calling, appointment setting, SDR level roles in the next 12 months. It cannot do it today. The voice quality and the intelligence in the AI is not good enough. I believe in the next 2 years, you'll be able to replace full-on sales discovery. And within the next 5 years, you'll be able to fully replace AE sales level aspects being done. Now, what won't be replaced is high-level enterprise sales, super technical relationship-based sales, but the transactional sales that are not high-skilled will be able to be replaced by AI, in my opinion, in the next 3 to 5 years, if not sooner. And so it's just about how we evolve with that process, how we use it to our advantage today, and how we evolve in that. And AI is not going to take our jobs. They'll just take the jobs that are here today, and they'll create so many other new jobs, and we'll just have to evolve. But if you are one of those guys, like we talked about earlier, who's just comfortable being in your 20-year marriage and you're not willing to evolve and you're just, I'm here in my middle manager role, now's the time you better taking evolution seriously. Now's the time you better take your skill development, all of those things seriously, because I think that if we're not growing in this landscape, we're dying, and AI will take us all out if we're not growing right now. So final words from you, Bill, on that. I know that's like end of the world type of catastrophe thinking, but I'd rather be prepared for that
Yeah.
than to be underprepared.
I think it's better to have that conversation for sure. When you look back at history, you think about the second industrial revolution, even the third, just things weren't moving that fast. And so people felt very safe because things weren't changing that fast. And, some jobs were replaced by robotics, back in the 80s at certain companies, but it was always slow. And now if you think about it, it's moving so fast. And if we look at a business first, look at Blockbuster, for example, that's always a popular businesses that didn't reinvent themselves and didn't anticipate and stay out in front. They don't exist. It's now more than ever the same for people. People historically, people felt safe. I'm in this job. I got job security. And I think with AI, especially, that's going away more and more. And I think just like companies like Netflix came along and are staying ahead of the game, they no longer ship DVDs from what I know.
Right.
Every person needs to reinvent themselves just like companies have because it's moving fast. And we've got a human mind. We can be creative. It's just a matter of how can I make an offer in this world to make a living and have fun and stay out of being obsolete in the world that we live in. And I think about it. Everybody has to think about it.
Have to. Yeah, I mean, and that's so true. I think your Blockbuster and Netflix comparison is a perfect one to discuss, because even Netflix could have just said, I'm the DVD company and not evolved into being a streaming company. But they evolved in 3 different stages of their business. And you look at a company like Redbox, who came along in the Netflix area, they came in hard and fast and they're gone. At least, I mean, maybe they're not gone, but at least I don't see them. So yeah, the evolution is going to be key in today's landscape. Bill, I've had an amazing time talking to you.
Likewise.
Are you still in Dallas, by the way?
Yeah, we're here through December and then we're back on the road.
Well, before you leave, I'm actually getting together a couple of other entrepreneurs similar to you and I that are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm going to try to organize a dinner next week or the following. So I'll be in touch with you, and if we can get out there, it'll probably be more like around the Irving, Arlington area, so kind of central to you, because I think you're out in Fort Worth, right? Cool. So if we can have it connect and we can make it work, I'd love to have you out there with us too as well, just to kind of break some bread as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right. Yep. See ya.
Bye.